Officer Jake Martinez had been working the night shift for 3 years, but nothing could have prepared him for what he would encounter that cold Tuesday evening in November. The radio crackled to life at 11:47 p.m. with a domestic disturbance call on Maple Street. His German Shepherd partner Rex lifted his head from the passenger seat, ears alert and ready for action. The neighborhood was quiet as they pulled up to the small 2-story house. Porch lights flickered on neighboring homes as curious residents peered through their windows. Jake noticed the front door was slightly open, and broken glass sparkled on the front steps under his flashlight beam. Rex's nose twitched as he caught scent of something that made him whine softly. As they approached the house, Jake could hear muffled sounds coming from inside. His training kicked in as he radioed for backup and carefully pushed the front door open. The living room was in complete chaos. Furniture was overturned, picture frames lay shattered on the floor, and there were clear signs of a violent struggle. Rex's behavior became increasingly agitated as they moved through the house. The dog's nose led them toward the kitchen, where they found more evidence of the altercation. A chair was broken in half, and there were dark stains on the linoleum floor that made Jake's stomach turn. The silence in the house was deafening, broken only by the sound of their footsteps and Rex's heavy breathing. That's when they heard it. A small, barely audible whimpering coming from somewhere upstairs. Jake's heart raced as he and Rex carefully climbed the creaky wooden stairs. The sound was so faint that he almost missed it, but Rex's keen hearing had picked it up immediately. The dog's tail was low and his entire body was tense with concern. The upstairs hallway was dark except for a thin line of light coming from under one of the bedroom doors. As they got closer, Jake could make out the soft sound of someone crying. He knocked gently on the door and identified himself as a police officer. The crying stopped immediately, replaced by complete silence. After several minutes of coaxing, Jake heard the sound of small footsteps approaching the door. A tiny voice, barely above a whisper, asked if he was really a police officer. Jake's heart broke at the fear he could hear in that small voice. He assured the child that he was there to help, and that everything would be okay. The door opened slowly to reveal a little girl who couldn't have been more than 6 years old. Her blonde hair was tangled, her pajamas were dirty, and her blue eyes were red from crying. She clutched a stuffed rabbit tightly against her chest and looked up at Jake with a mixture of fear and hope. Rex immediately sensed the child's distress and lowered himself to the ground, making himself appear less intimidating. The little girl's eyes widened when she saw the big dog, but Rex's gentle demeanor seemed to calm her slightly. Jake knelt down to her level and spoke in the softest voice he could manage. The girl introduced herself as Emma, and Jake could see that she had been hiding in the bedroom for hours. Her small frame was trembling, and she kept looking over her shoulder as if expecting someone to appear at any moment. Jake noticed that she had barricaded the door with a chair and had been hiding under the bed when they arrived. As Jake tried to assess the situation, Emma kept glancing between him and Rex. The dog seemed to understand that his presence was important, and he remained perfectly still, allowing the child to gradually become more comfortable. Jake asked Emma if she was hurt, and she shook her head, but her behavior suggested she had witnessed something terrible. The house felt eerily quiet as Jake tried to piece together what had happened. Emma's responses were limited to nods and shakes of her head, and she seemed too frightened to speak about what she had seen. Rex moved closer to the child, and surprisingly, she reached out to touch his fur, finding comfort in the gentle animal's presence. Jake's radio crackled with updates from dispatch, but he kept the volume low to avoid startling Emma further. Backup was still several minutes away, and he knew he needed to get more information about what had transpired in the house. The evidence downstairs painted a disturbing picture, but he needed to know if there were other victims or if the perpetrator was still in the area. Emma's grip on her stuffed rabbit tightened as Jake asked about her family. She pointed to a family photo on the nightstand that showed her with a woman who appeared to be her mother and a man Jake assumed was her father or stepfather. The photo looked recent and everyone appeared happy, which made the current situation even more heartbreaking. As they sat in the small bedroom, Jake noticed other details that troubled him. There were toys scattered around the room, but also signs that Emma had been trying to take care of herself. Empty juice boxes and crackers were on the floor near where she had been hiding, suggesting she had been alone for quite some time. Rex's training as a therapy dog began to show as he gently moved closer to Emma. The child's breathing started to become more regular, and she even managed a small smile when Rex tilted his head in that endearing way dogs do when they're trying to understand something. Jake realized that Rex might be the key to getting Emma to open up about what had happened. The sound of approaching sirens could be heard in the distance, and Jake knew that soon the house would be filled with other officers, paramedics, and possibly social workers. He wanted to use these remaining quiet moments to try to understand what Emma had witnessed and to ensure that she felt safe enough to share her story. As Emma continued to pet Rex's fur, Jake noticed that she kept looking toward the bedroom door with obvious anxiety. Something had happened in this house that had terrified this little girl so much that she had hidden away for hours, too scared to come out even when she heard voices calling for help. The broken furniture and evidence of violence downstairs told part of the story, but Jake sensed that the full truth was much more complex and disturbing than he initially realized. The sirens grew louder as backup arrived, but Jake remained focused on Emma. Rex had positioned himself between the little girl and the bedroom door, as if sensing her need for protection. The child's small hand continued to stroke the dog's fur, and Jake could see that this simple contact was helping her feel safer. Officer Sarah Chen was the first to arrive upstairs, moving quietly so as not to startle Emma. Sarah had extensive training in dealing with child victims, and Jake felt relieved to have her expertise. She introduced herself to Emma in a gentle voice and complimented her on how brave she was being. Emma looked between the two officers and then down at Rex, who had remained perfectly still throughout the interaction. Sarah knelt down beside Jake and asked Emma if she could sit with them. The little girl nodded, though she kept her stuffed rabbit clutched tightly against her chest. Jake explained to Sarah what he had discovered so far, the evidence of violence downstairs, Emma hiding in the bedroom, and her reluctance to speak about what had happened. Sarah nodded and suggested they try a different approach. She had brought a small bag with her that contained coloring books, crayons, and other items designed to help children feel more comfortable. As Sarah opened the bag, Emma's eyes showed the first spark of interest Jake had seen since finding her. Rex's tail wagged slightly when he saw Emma's face brighten, and Jake realized that the dog was responding to the child's emotional state. This partnership between human and animal was proving more valuable than any traditional interrogation technique. Sarah pulled out a coloring book and some crayons, spreading them on the floor between them. She began coloring a picture of a house, talking softly about colors and asking Emma simple questions about her favorite things. Gradually, Emma began to respond with single words, then short phrases. The breakthrough came when Sarah asked Emma about her family. The little girl pointed to the family photo again and said that the picture showed her with her mommy and daddy. But then her expression changed and she corrected herself, saying that the man in the photo was actually her stepfather, Mark, and that her real daddy lived far away. Jake and Sarah exchanged glances, understanding that family dynamics might be crucial to understanding what had happened. Emma continued coloring, but her strokes became more aggressive when she talked about Mark. Rex seemed to sense the change in her mood and moved even closer to her side. As Emma became more comfortable, she began to share small details about her life. She told them that her mommy worked at the grocery store and that Mark had moved in with them about a year ago. At first, Emma said, Mark had been nice and brought her presents. But lately, things had been different. The little girl's voice dropped to almost a whisper as she described how Mark had been drinking more and getting angry about everything. She said her mommy had been sad a lot, and that she often heard them arguing late at night. Emma had learned to hide in her room when the shouting started, covering her ears with her pillow to block out the noise. Sarah gently encouraged Emma to continue, while Jake took notes on everything the child said. Rex remained perfectly still, providing a calming presence that seemed to give Emma the courage to keep talking. The dog's training and therapy work was evident in how he responded to the child's emotional needs. Emma's revelations became more disturbing as she continued. She described how Mark would throw things when he was angry, and how her mother had started wearing long sleeves even on hot days. The little girl didn't fully understand the implications of what she was describing, but Jake and Sarah recognized the classic signs of domestic abuse. The child explained that earlier that evening, she had been in her room playing with her dolls when she heard Mark and her mother arguing downstairs. The fight was louder than usual and Emma could hear things breaking. She had wanted to go downstairs to make sure her mommy was okay, but she was too scared. As Emma recounted the events, her hands began to shake, and Rex gently nudged her arm with his nose. The contact seemed to ground her, and she took a deep breath before continuing. She told them how the arguing had suddenly stopped, and then she heard her mother screaming. The sound of her mother's screams had terrified Emma so much that she had hidden under her bed with her stuffed rabbit. She stayed there for what felt like hours, listening to the sounds coming from downstairs. There had been more crashing, then heavy footsteps, and finally the slam of the front door. Emma's voice became even quieter as she described the silence that followed. She had waited and waited for her mother to come upstairs and tell her everything was okay, but her mother never came. Eventually, Emma had crept to the top of the stairs and called out for her mommy, but there was no answer. The little girl had been too frightened to go downstairs by herself, especially since all the lights were off except for the one in the kitchen. She had returned to her room, pushed a chair against the door, and hidden under her bed until she heard Jake and Rex moving through the house. As Emma finished her account, tears began streaming down her face. Sarah handed her a tissue and assured her that she had been very brave. Jake felt his heart breaking as he realized this child had been alone and terrified for hours, not knowing what had happened to her mother or whether she was safe. Rex seemed to understand Emma's distress and gently placed his head on her lap. The gesture brought the first genuine smile Jake had seen from the little girl. She wrapped her arms around the dog's neck and whispered that Rex was a good dog, just like the one she had always wanted. The information Emma had provided painted a clearer picture of what had occurred. But Jake and Sarah both realized they still needed to find Emma's mother. The evidence downstairs suggested a violent altercation, but they hadn't found any victim in the house. This left them with troubling questions about what Mark had done and where Emma's mother might be. As paramedics and additional officers arrived, Jake made sure that Emma felt comfortable with each new person who entered the room. Rex continued to provide emotional support, and Jake could see that the bond between the child and the dog was helping her cope with an unimaginably traumatic situation. The house was now bustling with activity as the crime scene team began processing the evidence downstairs. Jake knew that Emma would need to be interviewed more thoroughly, but for now, his primary concern was ensuring her safety and emotional well-being. Rex had proven to be an invaluable partner in gaining the child's trust and helping her feel secure enough to share her story. Detective Lisa Rodriguez arrived at the scene just as the crime scene team was finishing their initial assessment downstairs. She had 20 years of experience investigating domestic violence cases, and the evidence she observed painted a disturbing picture. Blood spatter on the kitchen walls, signs of a violent struggle, and most concerning of all, no sign of Emma's mother anywhere in the house. Jake briefed Detective Rodriguez on what Emma had shared so far, while Rex remained by the little girl's side. The detective listened carefully, taking notes and asking specific questions about the timeline Emma had described. Sarah continued to engage the child with coloring activities, creating a safe space for her to process what had happened. Emma had grown more comfortable with the officers, but she became visibly anxious when Detective Rodriguez mentioned they needed to find her mother. The little girl asked repeatedly if her mommy was okay, and the adults exchanged worried glances over her head. Rex seemed to sense the tension and moved closer to Emma, providing the comfort she desperately needed. The search for Emma's mother intensified as Detective Rodriguez coordinated with patrol units throughout the city. Mark's description had been circulated to all law enforcement agencies, and an APB was issued for his vehicle. The detective also contacted local hospitals, thinking that Emma's mother might have been taken for medical treatment after the attack. As the investigation expanded, Jake remained with Emma and Rex in the bedroom. The little girl had begun to ask more questions about what would happen to her and when she would see her mother again. Jake struggled to provide reassuring answers when he didn't know the truth himself. Rex's presence continued to be a source of comfort for Emma, and she had begun talking to the dog as if he could understand everything she was saying. Detective Rodriguez returned upstairs with updates from the crime scene team. They had found blood evidence that suggested someone had been seriously injured in the kitchen, but the trail led toward the back door. There were also signs that someone had attempted to clean up some of the blood, but had been interrupted or had given up partway through. The discovery of blood evidence made everyone more concerned about Emma's mother's well-being. Detective Rodriguez gently asked Emma if she could remember any other details about what she had heard that night. The little girl thought carefully, her small hand still resting on Rex's fur for comfort. Emma suddenly remembered that after the screaming stopped, she had heard her stepfather talking on the phone. She couldn't understand everything he said, but she remembered hearing him mention something about taking care of it and making it look like an accident. The information sent chills through the room as the adults realized they might be dealing with something far more sinister than a domestic dispute gone wrong. The little girl also recalled hearing Mark's truck start up in the driveway, but then it had returned a short time later. She had heard him moving around downstairs for a while longer before leaving again. This timeline was crucial information that could help investigators determine what Mark had done with Emma's mother. As the night wore on, Emma grew tired but refused to leave Rex's side. She had formed such a strong bond with the therapy dog that separating them seemed cruel. Detective Rodriguez made arrangements for Emma to be taken to the children's hospital for a medical evaluation, and special permission was granted for Rex to accompany her. The ride to the hospital was quiet, with Emma curled up next to Rex in the back of the police vehicle. Jake sat with them, marveling at how the dog seemed to understand exactly what the child needed. Rex remained perfectly still during the ride, allowing Emma to use him as a pillow while she dozed fitfully. At the hospital, Child Protective Services caseworker Maria Santos was waiting to meet with Emma. Maria had extensive experience working with traumatized children, and she immediately understood the importance of Rex's presence in helping Emma feel secure. The medical team agreed to allow the therapy dog to remain with Emma during her examination. Dr. Patricia Williams, a pediatric specialist, conducted a thorough but gentle examination of Emma. The little girl showed no signs of physical abuse, which was a relief to everyone involved. However, Dr. Williams noted signs of severe emotional trauma and recommended that Emma receive immediate counseling support. During the medical evaluation, Emma whispered something to Rex that made Jake's blood run cold. She told the dog that she was scared Mark would come back and hurt her too, just like he had hurt her mommy. When Jake gently asked what she meant, Emma explained that she had seen Mark hit her mother before, though she had never told anyone about it. This revelation added another layer to the investigation. Detective Rodriguez realized they were dealing with a pattern of domestic abuse that had escalated to what might be attempted murder, or worse. The search for Mark became even more urgent as they understood he posed a continuing threat to Emma, and potentially to others. Emma's memories continued to surface as she felt safer with her protectors around her. She told them about times when Mark had gotten angry and broken things, and how her mother had made excuses for the bruises that appeared on her arms and face. The little girl had been living in an environment of fear and violence. Though she hadn't fully understood what was happening, the hospital became a temporary safe haven for Emma. With Rex providing constant emotional support, the therapy dog had proven invaluable in helping the child feel secure enough to share crucial information about the case. Jake realized that without Rex's calming presence, Emma might never have opened up about what she had witnessed. As dawn approached, there was still no sign of Emma's mother or Mark. The investigation had expanded to include search teams, K-9 units, and coordination with neighboring jurisdictions. Every hour that passed made everyone more concerned about what they might ultimately discover. Emma had fallen asleep curled up next to Rex on the hospital bed, her stuffed rabbit tucked under one arm and her other hand resting on the dog's fur. Jake watched over them both, determined to protect this brave little girl who had already endured far too much trauma in her young life. Detective Rodriguez worked through the night, following leads and coordinating with various law enforcement agencies. The evidence from the house continued to paint a troubling picture, and she knew they were racing against time to find Emma's mother and bring Mark to justice. The bond between Emma and Rex had become a crucial element in the investigation. The therapy dog's ability to provide comfort and security had allowed the traumatized child to share information that might be key to solving the case. As the sun began to rise, Jake knew that the next phase of the investigation would depend heavily on the trust Emma had placed in him and his four-legged partner. The breakthrough came at 6:30 a.m. when Detective Rodriguez received a call that would change everything. A hiker had discovered a woman's body in Riverside Park, about 15 miles from Emma's house. The victim matched the description of Emma's mother, and personal items found nearby confirmed their worst fears. Sarah Mitchell, Emma's mother, had been found dead. Jake felt his heart sink as he watched Emma sleeping peacefully next to Rex. The little girl had no idea that her world had just changed forever. Detective Rodriguez assembled the team to discuss how they would handle telling Emma about her mother's death. Knowing that the news would devastate the already traumatized child, Dr. Williams recommended that a child psychologist be present when Emma was told about her mother. The hospital's grief counselor, Dr. James Parker, was called in to help with the difficult conversation. Everyone agreed that Rex should remain with Emma during this devastating moment, as the therapy dog had become her primary source of comfort. When Emma woke up, she immediately asked about her mother. Jake and Sarah exchanged glances, knowing they couldn't delay the inevitable conversation. Dr. Parker sat down next to Emma's bed while Rex positioned himself closer to the little girl, as if sensing that something important was about to happen. The conversation was heartbreaking. Dr. Parker used gentle, age-appropriate language to explain that Emma's mother had been found and that she had died from her injuries. Emma's initial reaction was confusion, asking if her mommy would get better if she went to the doctor. When the reality sank in, her grief was overwhelming. Rex immediately responded to Emma's distress, moving closer and allowing her to bury her face in his fur while she sobbed. The therapy dog remained perfectly still, providing a steady, comforting presence as Emma grappled with the loss of her mother. Jake had to fight back his own tears as he watched the brave little girl's world collapse. The news of Sarah's death transformed the investigation from a missing person case to a homicide. Detective Rodriguez worked with the medical examiner to understand the extent of Sarah's injuries and the timeline of her death. The preliminary examination suggested she had died from blunt force trauma, confirming that Mark had murdered her. Emma's grief was compounded by fear. She repeatedly asked if Mark would come back to hurt her, and no amount of reassurance seemed to calm her anxiety. Rex seemed to understand her fear and rarely left her side, even when hospital staff tried to encourage him to take breaks for food and water. The investigation intensified as law enforcement agencies across 3 states joined the manhunt for Mark Collins. His truck had been spotted on traffic cameras heading south, and investigators believed he was trying to flee to Mexico. The urgency of capturing him was heightened by the knowledge that he had murdered Sarah and posed a continuing threat to others. Emma's extended family was contacted, and her maternal grandmother, Dorothy Mitchell, traveled from Oregon to be with her granddaughter. Dorothy was devastated by the loss of her daughter, but immediately focused on providing stability for Emma. She was amazed by the bond between Emma and Rex and grateful for the comfort the therapy dog provided. The meeting between Emma and her grandmother was emotional but hopeful. Emma recognized Dorothy from visits and photos, and having family present seemed to provide some comfort. However, Emma insisted that Rex remain nearby, and Dorothy quickly understood how important the dog had become to her granddaughter's emotional well-being. Child Protective Services worked with Dorothy to establish temporary custody arrangements for Emma. The grandmother was a retired teacher who lived in a safe, stable environment and was eager to provide a loving home for Emma. However, the transition would need to be handled carefully. Given Emma's trauma and her attachment to Rex, Jake found himself deeply invested in Emma's well-being. His own daughter was close to Emma's age, and he couldn't imagine what she was going through. He worked with his supervisor to arrange for Rex to continue providing therapy support to Emma, even after the immediate investigation concluded. The search for Mark continued around the clock. His photograph was distributed to media outlets, and tips began pouring in from the public. Several sightings were reported along the interstate highway system, suggesting he was indeed fleeing southward. Border Patrol agents were alerted to watch for him at crossing points. Emma's nightmares began the second night at the hospital. She would wake up screaming, calling for her mother and expressing fear that Mark was coming to get her. Rex's presence was the only thing that could calm her during these episodes. The therapy dog would immediately respond to her distress, providing physical comfort until she could fall back asleep. Dr. Parker worked with Emma to help her process her grief and trauma. Play therapy sessions included Rex, as the dog's presence allowed Emma to feel safe enough to express her emotions. She drew pictures of her family, including Rex as a protective figure standing between her and the scary things in the world. The forensic evidence from the crime scene continued to build a strong case against Mark. DNA evidence confirmed that Sarah's blood was found throughout the house, and Mark's fingerprints were on several items that had been used as weapons. Security cameras from neighboring houses captured images of his truck leaving and returning to the property that night. 3 days after Sarah's body was discovered, Mark's truck was found abandoned at a rest stop near the Texas-Mexico border. K-9 units tracked his scent to a nearby parking area where it appeared he had switched vehicles. The investigation expanded to include cooperation with Mexican authorities in case he had successfully crossed the border. Emma's progress with Dr. Parker was slow but steady. She began to talk more about her mother and their happy memories together. Rex continued to be an integral part of her healing process, and Emma told anyone who would listen that Rex was her hero who had helped save her. Dorothy made arrangements to return to Oregon with Emma, but she was concerned about how the separation from Rex would affect her granddaughter. Jake and Rex had become such important figures in Emma's life that Dorothy worried about adding another loss to what the child had already endured. Jake spoke with his supervisor about the possibility of Rex making a transition visit to Oregon to help Emma adjust to her new home. The department recognized the exceptional circumstances and the therapy dog's crucial role in Emma's recovery. Arrangements were made for Jake and Rex to travel with Emma and Dorothy to help with the transition. The media attention surrounding the case had grown significantly, with news outlets calling Emma the brave little girl who helped solve her mother's murder. While the attention was overwhelming, it also generated numerous tips that aided in the search for Mark. The story of Emma and Rex touched hearts across the nation. As Emma prepared to leave the hospital, she held tightly to Rex and asked Jake if the dog would always remember her. Jake assured her that Rex would never forget her and that they would always be special friends. The bond between the traumatized child and the therapy dog had become a beacon of hope in an otherwise tragic story. The investigation remained active as law enforcement continued their pursuit of Mark Collins. Meanwhile, Emma began the difficult journey of healing, supported by her loving grandmother and the memory of the brave police dog who had helped her through the darkest time of her young life. The flight to Oregon was Emma's first time on an airplane, and under different circumstances it might have been an exciting adventure. Instead, she clung to Rex throughout the journey, finding comfort in his steady presence as they traveled toward her new life with grandmother Dorothy. Jake sat beside them, marveling at how the therapy dog seemed to understand exactly what Emma needed at every moment. Dorothy's house in Portland was warm and welcoming, filled with photos of Emma's mother from childhood and family memories that would help keep Sarah's spirit alive. Emma explored her new room, which Dorothy had carefully prepared with some of Emma's favorite toys and clothes that had been retrieved from the house. Rex followed Emma everywhere, serving as her constant companion and source of security. The first few nights in Oregon were difficult. Emma had nightmares about Mark coming to find her, and she would wake up calling for her mother. Rex had been given special permission to sleep in Emma's room, and his presence was often the only thing that could help her fall back asleep. Dorothy was amazed by the dog's intuitive understanding of Emma's needs. Jake had planned to stay for just a few days to help with the transition, but it became clear that Emma wasn't ready to say goodbye to Rex yet. His supervisor granted an extension, understanding the exceptional circumstances and the importance of Rex's continued support for the traumatized child. The local police department in Portland also offered their assistance in facilitating the therapy dog's stay. During their time in Oregon, Emma began working with a new child psychologist, Dr. Rebecca Chen, who specialized in trauma recovery for young children. Dr. Chen immediately recognized the importance of Rex's role in Emma's healing process and incorporated the therapy dog into their sessions. Emma felt safe enough to talk about her feelings when Rex was nearby. The breakthrough in the manhunt for Mark Collins came on Emma's 8th day in Portland. Mexican authorities arrested him at a bus station in Guadalajara, where he had been living under a false identity. The news brought relief to everyone involved in the case, but Emma's reaction was more complex than expected. While she was happy that Mark couldn't hurt anyone else, she was also afraid of what would happen when he went to court. Detective Rodriguez flew to Portland to personally update Emma and Dorothy about Mark's capture. She explained in age-appropriate terms that Mark would face trial for what he had done to Emma's mother, and that Emma might need to tell her story to help ensure justice was served. The little girl's anxiety spiked at the thought of talking about that terrible night in front of strangers. Rex seemed to sense Emma's increased stress following the news of Mark's arrest. The therapy dog became even more attentive, rarely leaving her side and positioning himself between Emma and any potential sources of anxiety. His protective instincts had developed specifically around Emma's needs, and Jake was amazed by the depth of their bond. Jake knew that his time in Portland was coming to an end, and that he would need to return to his duties back home. The thought of separating Emma from Rex was heartbreaking, but Jake also understood that the therapy dog had other responsibilities and children who needed his help. They began preparing Emma for the eventual goodbye, though she begged them to let Rex stay with her forever. Dr. Chen worked with Emma to help her understand that saying goodbye to Rex didn't mean losing him completely. They created a photo album of Emma and Rex's time together, and Jake promised to send regular updates and photos of Rex's continuing work. Emma wrote a letter to Rex, thanking him for saving her and promising to be brave like he had taught her. The local media in Portland had picked up Emma's story, and the community rallied around the little girl and her grandmother. Donations poured in to help with Emma's care and therapy, and several local organizations offered ongoing support. The story of Emma and Rex had touched hearts across the country, inspiring others who had faced similar traumas. As the day of Jake and Rex's departure approached, Emma insisted on doing something special for Rex. With Dorothy's help, she baked dog treats shaped like hearts and made a special collar tag that read, "Rex, Emma's hero." The presentation ceremony was emotional, with Emma telling Rex how much he meant to her, and how he had helped her feel safe when she was most afraid. The goodbye at the airport was heartbreaking. Emma hugged Rex tightly, whispering promises to remember him always and to be brave. Rex seemed to understand the significance of the moment, gently licking Emma's tears and staying close until the final moment of departure. Jake had to carry Rex away as Emma waved goodbye, both of them understanding that their special bond would continue even from a distance. Back home, Jake found himself changed by the experience with Emma. Rex had always been an exceptional therapy dog, but their work with Emma had demonstrated the profound impact that a trained animal could have on a traumatized child. Jake began advocating for expanded therapy dog programs in his department and spoke at conferences about their experience. Emma's adjustment to life in Portland continued with ups and downs. She started school with additional support services and slowly began making friends. Dorothy enrolled her in art therapy classes, where Emma created beautiful drawings that often featured a large German shepherd protecting a little girl. Her new teacher was amazed by Emma's resilience and strength. The legal proceedings against Mark Collins moved forward, with prosecutors building a strong case based on the evidence collected at the crime scene and Emma's testimony. Emma's victim impact statement was delivered through a video recording made with Dr. Chen's support, allowing her to tell her story without having to face Mark in person. In the video, she mentioned how Rex had helped her feel brave enough to talk to the police. Rex continued his work as a therapy dog, helping other children who had experienced trauma. Jake noticed that Rex seemed to have developed an even deeper understanding of children's emotional needs following his time with Emma. The German Shepherd's reputation as an exceptional therapy dog grew, and he was often specifically requested for cases involving young victims. Letters and drawings arrived regularly from Emma, updating Jake and Rex on her progress. She wrote about school, her new friends, and her grandmother's cooking. She always included a special message for Rex, telling him about her dreams where he was still protecting her, and thanking him for teaching her to be brave. 6 months after leaving Portland, Jake received an invitation that brought tears to his eyes. Emma was going to receive a bravery award from the state of Oregon for her courage in helping solve her mother's murder case. She had specifically requested that Jake and Rex be present for the ceremony, saying that she couldn't accept the award without her heroes there to support her. The reunion at the award ceremony was joyful and emotional. Emma had grown taller and seemed more confident, though she still rushed to hug Rex the moment she saw him. The therapy dog's tail wagged furiously as he was reunited with his special friend. and observers could see the genuine affection between them. During her acceptance speech, Emma spoke about how Rex had helped her find the courage to tell her story, and how their friendship had taught her that even in the darkest times, there were good people and animals who would help protect and care for her. Her words moved the entire audience, and many people were inspired by her strength and resilience. The ceremony marked a turning point in Emma's healing journey. While she would always carry the trauma of losing her mother, she had learned that she was stronger than she knew, and that love and support could help her overcome even the most difficult challenges. Rex had been instrumental in teaching her these lessons, and their bond remained unbreakable despite the distance between them. 2 years had passed since that terrible night. When Emma first whispered her fears to Officer Martinez and Rex, the little girl who had once hidden under her bed in terror had grown into a confident 8-year-old who spoke passionately about helping other children who had experienced trauma. Her transformation was remarkable, though Jake knew that Rex deserved much of the credit for helping Emma find her strength. Emma's life in Portland had settled into a comfortable routine with grandmother Dorothy. She excelled in school, participated in art therapy programs, and had even joined a youth group for children who had lost parents. Emma often shared her story with other kids, telling them how a special police dog had helped her feel brave when everything seemed scary and uncertain. Jake continued to receive regular letters and drawings from Emma, each one showing her continued growth and healing. She wrote about her friends at school, her favorite subjects, and her dreams of maybe becoming a police officer someday so she could help other children. Rex always seemed excited when Emma's letters arrived, as if he could sense they were from his special friend. The legal case against Mark Collins had concluded with his conviction for first-degree murder. He received a life sentence without the possibility of parole, bringing some measure of justice for Sarah's death. Emma had not been required to testify in person, as her recorded statement and the physical evidence provided sufficient proof of Mark's guilt. The closure of the case allowed Emma to focus fully on moving forward with her life. Rex's reputation as a therapy dog had grown significantly. Following his work with Emma, he had helped dozens of other children cope with various traumas, and his success rate was remarkable. Jake often told other officers about the importance of the human-animal bond in healing, using Emma's story as an example of how therapy dogs could make a life-changing difference. The police department had expanded its therapy dog program based on the success Jake and Rex had achieved. 3 additional dogs had been trained and deployed throughout the city, helping children and adults who had experienced various forms of trauma. Jake had become the lead trainer for the program, sharing his expertise with other officers and their canine partners. Emma's 8th birthday was celebrated with a special surprise that Dorothy had been planning for months. Jake and Rex traveled to Portland for the celebration, bringing with them a group of other therapy dogs from their expanded program. Emma was thrilled to meet Rex's colleagues and spent the entire day playing with the dogs and learning about their different specialties. During the birthday visit, Emma shared exciting news with Jake and Rex. She had been selected to speak at a national conference about therapy animals and their impact on trauma recovery. At only 8 years old, Emma would be the youngest speaker ever invited to address the conference. She was nervous but excited about the opportunity to share her story with people who could help other children. Jake was amazed by Emma's confidence and poise as she described her plans for the presentation. She wanted to focus on how Rex had helped her feel safe, and how important it was for police departments to have therapy dogs available for children. Emma had even prepared a PowerPoint presentation with photos of her and Rex throughout their journey together. The national conference took place in Chicago, and Emma's presentation was the highlight of the event. Standing beside a podium with Rex sitting calmly next to her, Emma told her story with clarity and emotion that moved the entire audience. She spoke about the night her mother died and how Rex had helped her find the courage to trust the police officers who were trying to help her. Emma's speech was particularly powerful when she described how Rex had never left her side during the most frightening moments of her life. She explained that the therapy dog had given her something to focus on besides her fear, and had helped her feel protected when she felt most vulnerable. The audience gave her a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. Following Emma's presentation, numerous police departments and therapy organizations contacted Jake about implementing similar programs in their jurisdictions. Emma's story had demonstrated the profound impact that properly trained therapy dogs could have on traumatized children, and many agencies wanted to replicate their success. The conference also led to unexpected opportunities for Emma. A children's book publisher approached Dorothy about the possibility of Emma writing a book about her experience with Rex. The idea excited Emma, who had always enjoyed writing and drawing. She began working on a book that would help other children understand that they could be brave even when they were scared. Rex's work continued to evolve as he helped more children deal with various traumas. Jake noticed that the German Shepherd had developed an almost supernatural ability to sense what each child needed. Some children needed physical comfort, while others needed Rex to simply sit nearby and provide a calming presence. Rex seemed to understand these differences instinctively. Emma's book project became a family effort, with Dorothy helping with the writing and editing while Emma provided the illustrations. The book, titled Rex and the Little Girl Who Found Her Brave, told Emma's story in age-appropriate language that would help other children understand that they could overcome frightening experiences with the right support. The book's publication was a major milestone for Emma, who had gone from a terrified child hiding under her bed to a published author and advocate for trauma victims. She donated a portion of the book's proceeds to therapy dog training programs, ensuring that other children would have access to the same kind of support that Rex had provided for her. Jake often reflected on how much his life had changed since that night when he and Rex first found Emma. The experience had deepened his understanding of the importance of his work and had shown him the incredible resilience that children could demonstrate when given proper support. Rex had been the key to unlocking Emma's strength and courage. The therapy dog program that grew out of Emma's case had helped hundreds of children and adults cope with trauma. Jake regularly received letters from other officers describing how their therapy dogs had made breakthroughs with victims who had previously been too frightened or traumatized to cooperate with investigations. Emma's story had started a movement that was helping people across the country. Emma's relationship with Rex remained strong, despite the distance between them. She visited whenever possible, and Jake made sure to bring Rex to Portland at least twice a year. Their reunions were always joyful, with Rex immediately recognizing Emma and responding to her with obvious affection and excitement. As Emma approached her 9th birthday, she had big plans for the future. She wanted to continue advocating for therapy dog programs and hoped to visit other cities to speak about her experience. She also dreamed of attending police academy someday, inspired by Jake's example and motivated by her desire to help other children who found themselves in frightening situations. The transformation from that terrified little girl to the confident young advocate was remarkable. But Jake knew that the foundation of Emma's strength had been built during those first crucial hours when Rex had provided comfort and security. The therapy dog had given Emma something solid to hold on to when her world was falling apart. And that initial connection had grown into a lifelong bond that continued to inspire both of them. Rex's legacy extended far beyond his work with Emma, but their story remained the gold standard for therapy dog intervention with traumatized children. Jake often used their experience as a training example, showing new officers and therapy dogs how patience, compassion, and the right animal partner could help unlock a child's ability to heal and grow stronger. 5 years had passed since that November night when Emma first whispered her terrifying secret to Officer Martinez and Rex. Now 12 years old, Emma had grown into a remarkable young woman whose story continued to inspire people around the world. Her book had become a bestseller, translated into multiple languages, and had helped countless children understand that they could overcome trauma with the right support. Emma's advocacy work had expanded beyond therapy dogs to include broader child protection initiatives. She had testified before Congress about the importance of trauma-informed care for children, always mentioning how Rex had been the first to show her that some adults could be trusted to help and protect her. Her poise and articulation amazed legislators who couldn't believe they were listening to someone so young speak with such wisdom and conviction. Jake had been promoted to lieutenant and now oversaw therapy dog programs for the entire state. The success of Emma's case had led to legislation requiring all police departments to have access to trained therapy animals when dealing with child victims. Emma had attended the bill signing ceremony, sitting proudly next to Rex as the governor acknowledged their role in inspiring this important change. Rex was now considered a legendary therapy dog. Though at 9 years old he was beginning to show his age, he moved a little slower than before, and Jake had started limiting his more physically demanding assignments. However, Rex's intuitive understanding of children's emotional needs remained as sharp as ever, and he continued to provide comfort to young victims throughout the region. Emma's relationship with Dorothy had deepened over the years, with her grandmother becoming not just a caregiver, but a true partner in Emma's advocacy work. Dorothy managed Emma's speaking engagements and book signings, ensuring that her granddaughter maintained a balance between her public work and her normal childhood activities like school, friends, and hobbies. The annual reunion between Emma and Rex had become a highly anticipated event, often covered by local media, who loved to document their continued friendship. This year's reunion was particularly special because it marked the 5th anniversary of their first meeting. Emma had planned a surprise party to honor Rex's service, inviting all the children he had helped over the years. The celebration took place at the police department, with over 50 children and their families attending to thank Rex for his service. Emma served as the master of ceremonies, sharing stories about Rex's impact on her life and introducing other children who wanted to share their own experiences with the therapy dog. The event was emotional and uplifting, demonstrating the lasting positive impact that one dog had made on so many lives. During the celebration, Emma announced her next big project, a documentary film about therapy dogs and their work with trauma victims. She had been working with a professional film crew to document Rex's current cases, always with proper permissions and privacy protections. The documentary would follow several children as they worked with therapy dogs to overcome various traumas. Jake was amazed by Emma's continued growth and maturity. She had developed into a confident public speaker who could address audiences of hundreds without showing any nervousness. Her message was always the same. Children are stronger than they know, healing is possible, and sometimes the help we need comes in unexpected forms like a furry friend with a wet nose and understanding eyes. Rex's health had begun to decline slightly, and Jake knew that the faithful therapy dog's career was approaching its end. The German Shepherd had given so much of himself to helping others that Jake wanted to ensure his retirement was comfortable and dignified. Emma had already expressed her hope that Rex could spend his final years in a peaceful setting where he would be pampered and loved. The documentary project allowed Emma to witness Rex's continued work with other children, and she was moved to see how he brought the same gentle patience to each new case. She watched him work with a young boy who had witnessed a car accident and a teenage girl who had survived a house fire. In each case, Rex seemed to understand exactly what each child needed to feel safe. Emma's own therapy had continued over the years, though less frequently as she had developed strong coping mechanisms and a solid support system. Dr. Chen remained her therapist and had become a close family friend. Emma often spoke about how therapy had helped her process her trauma and had given her tools to help other children facing similar challenges. The success of Emma's advocacy work had led to invitations to speak internationally. She had addressed conferences in Canada, the United Kingdom, and Australia, always accompanied by Dorothy and often joined by Jake and Rex when schedules permitted. Emma's message resonated across cultural boundaries, as the need for compassionate trauma care was universal. Emma's middle school years had been remarkably normal despite her public profile. She played soccer, participated in drama club, and maintained good grades while balancing her advocacy work. Her friends knew about her background but treated her like any other 7th grader, which Emma appreciated. She valued having spaces where she could just be a regular kid. The relationship between Jake and Emma had evolved over the years from protector and victim to mentor and mentee. Jake had become like a surrogate uncle to Emma, offering guidance on everything from career choices to dealing with the pressures of public speaking. Their bond had been forged in crisis but had grown into genuine family-like affection. As Rex approached retirement, plans were made for him to live with a retired officer who specialized in caring for aging police dogs. Emma was initially sad about Rex's retirement, but understood that he had earned the right to rest after years of service. She planned to visit him regularly and had already started a fund to ensure his medical care would be covered throughout his retirement. Emma's future plans included attending college to study criminal justice and psychology, with the goal of becoming a police officer who specialized in working with child victims. She wanted to combine her personal experience with professional training to help other children navigate the justice system after experiencing trauma. Jake had promised to help her achieve these goals. The documentary about therapy dogs premiered at a major film festival, with Emma attending as an executive producer. The film followed several cases, including archival footage of Emma's own journey with Rex. The documentary won awards and helped raise awareness about the importance of therapy animals in trauma recovery, leading to increased funding for such programs. On the 5th anniversary of that terrible November night, Emma wrote a letter to her younger self. In it, she acknowledged the fear and pain of that little girl hiding under the bed, but assured her that amazing people and an incredible dog named Rex would soon arrive to help her heal. She encouraged her younger self to trust the process and to believe that she was stronger than she knew. The letter was published in her local newspaper and went viral on social media, inspiring other trauma survivors to write their own letters of encouragement to their younger selves. Emma's simple gesture had started another movement. This one focused on helping people recognize their own resilience and growth. As Emma looked toward her teenage years and beyond, she carried with her the lessons that Rex had taught her about trust, courage, and the healing power of unconditional love. The therapy dog had saved her life in more ways than one, not just by helping her feel safe enough to speak that first night, but by showing her that she had the strength to help others find their own voices. Rex's legacy lived on not only through Emma's continued advocacy, but through the dozens of other children he had helped over the years. Many of them had gone on to become advocates themselves, creating a ripple effect of healing and hope that extended far beyond what anyone could have imagined that November night when a little girl first whispered her terrible secret to a police officer and his remarkable dog. The story that began with tragedy had transformed into one of triumph, resilience, and the extraordinary bond between humans and animals. Emma and Rex had shown the world that even in the darkest moments, hope could be found. Healing was possible, and sometimes the most unlikely friendships could change everything.